The true meaning of the single responsibility principle. Uncle Bob, what is he saying? Hello, I'm Chris Athanas. I'm a KMP developer. Tech Support said they're coming out. Close it up to Tuesday. I think that's what they told me. We're gonna go responding Uncle Bob, which I've been skewering lately. Some of his stuff is good. Some of it was because it's based on the stuff is based on. He admits, with poking and prodding. By the way, that yeah, these are just ideas that were floating around. There were people talk about on Usenet and message boards and BBSs and at work and at conferences and it wasn't really in books so much. There was like threads of these ideas, but most of the activity was happening online because it was happening super fast because people weren't getting the answers they were needed from the progenitors of these languages, object-oriented programming and stuff like that. People were It was just difficult to find information. It was not like they have the internet today. It was very esoteric. It'd be sort of like it's really playing chess sort of level of thing. It's like it was just a very there's only a few people doing it, and the people who do it were just muddling their way through. And that's where a lot of these ideas came from, which is people trying to figure out how to solve these issues, and they just came up with these little patterns and ideas and things that people talked about, and then nobody put their ownership on it. It was sort of a shared thing. It was like people would had this thing, and then they would add this little thing on here. It's like, oh yeah, what about this? And then all of a sudden you have this cohesive thing. It looks like and if somebody comes out and says, it's just puts a label on it, like Bob does the SRP, put the SRP, a solid, blah. It's like he puts his label on it, puts a book form, gets on the conference circuit, starts getting around the country training people, gets his little staff together, who'll come in and basically tell them exactly the same things in the book. And maybe a couple of little insights here and there, and some little secret sidelines about things they did at certain businesses and certain ways they've set things up. But it's still going to be opinions. There's no studies to prove any of this stuff is real or makes any sense at all. It's just ideas to think about. Do they actually apply to the thing you're trying to do? I don't know. Maybe, somewhat, hopefully. I mean, you're gonna have stuff to think it through and modify. He's like, these are the rules and laws. It's like more like these are ideas and concepts to think about and to consider. To some people have thought about these things, that they had these problems before. Maybe your problems are the same or similar, or you're totally doing different stuff. Like I was in the computers, got into the image processing side. That was what my startup was doing all this image processing stuff. Extremely esoteric. There was like only a few people. Even there was only a couple books about it. It was trivial stuff. It was and you had to like piece together all these other things like convolution mathematics and all this other stuff. There was eventually when you get down to the end of the day, it's just like adding numbers up, multiplying numbers. Ooh, but I was in a totally different field. So when I came into doing Android development with all this stuff, I thought they had this all figured out. It's like, no, these turns out these are just opinions. Now they're strongly held and told these like these are the facts and laws. It's like, no, these are just opinions, man. Let's keep going.
The single responsibility principle talks about responsibilities. A responsibility is a person.
Oh, it's a person. A responsibility is a person now. So single person principle. Okay, here we go.
It's not something that the code does. It's a person. A person who wants to make a change in the code. My code has a responsibility to that business guy who wants the rules changed.
Okay, so this is how he sees things. So it's like not designing a system for himself. Now he's handed a system, and this is what you interpret systems that other people have built. Okay, but it's not a responsibility as a person. All right, let's keep going.
My code has a responsibility.
By the way, there's a technique called hypnotic induction. There's a hypnosis technique. So he's doing hypnosis stuff right now. So one of the main hypnotic techniques, if you didn't know, they use it all over tech all the time, is confusion. By blasting concepts and gish galloping over these things and assuming certain definitions that are not normally held by people that he's held, or he's created a definition word for this idea group that he's not necessarily sharing with you in this public space without buying his program and his license, trademark, training facility. Yeah, okay, so hypnotic induction is produced through confusion by having multiple threads, and you're not allowed to respond or talk back or do interactive stuff with him. Well, he does admit it, which is good. I'll give him credit. He does admit this stuff when he's if you put him into a little box and able to do one-on-one, people have knocked down some of these concepts. And it turns out it's just what I'm saying. It's like he's defined these terms and then he goes past them, and everyone Whereas listening to this makes it up in their mind with their own definition. If they're not aware of his definition, they make their own definition up. So this is a hypnotic induction method that's basically sales.
Ability to the clerk who wants the format changed. And so the single responsibility principle says.
I mean, by the way, no shame in this. This is how it's done. Most people, like people, get aware of it, and when at some point or become aware of it, or they're on the inside, they do the same thing, but they don't want to mention it, but they know how this is how it's done. And but whereas people like are new to the game, like, hey, what's going on over here? It's like the hucksters at the old timey circuses which I had when I was a kid. They would bark and tell people to come over and look at the stuff they had inside. It was the most amazing thing ever. You'll never forget it. You'll tell your grandchildren and all that stuff. It's like same characters, the same type of guys, actually.
Any module should be responsible to only one person. Now, that's a slightly confusing statement.
See, they even admit to see. One of the things I do like about the Uncle Bob, is that he does kind of admit this stuff, and that also is a magnetic, is an induction technique. Is you're letting people know that you're in on what the trick is, but the trick still works. By the way, just keep going.
Because what if you're the only guy? What if you're the guy who reads the report and judges the business rules? Does that mean that I can now cram all that stuff into one module? No, because
why not?
Even though you're one guy, you're playing multiple roles. You have the role of the business decider, and you have the role of the report consumer. So the single.
What is that? He's just playing with the audience now. What is that even? What are you talking about, man? Okay, so I think what he's doing is he's referring to this very narrow field, but it's widely adopted, right? But it's a narrow field of CRUD, right? Create, read, update, delete, and you have all these functions on these database operations. And he's assuming that everybody in the audience is writing database code or doing these CRUD operation types of things at work, and these things make sense. But he's like, but everybody in the audience, because of the way he's speaking and the terms he's using, are all using their own definitions. They're all getting super confused. They're like, gosh, this guy seems to know more about my business than I do. We need to get on his training calls and get our people signed up for their certifications.
Responsibility principle really says that a module should be responsible to one and only one role.
Okay, what does that even mean? I think what he's trying to say, and is getting around it, what maybe we'll find out at this conference, is he's talking about the Alan Kay stuff, and what Igor Borguyenko is talking about in his classes and his courses, which is how to separate these entities out and have an API that talks to them. You can't skip over the API, even though it's more performant. Like, you can't skip over the API. You actually have to decouple all these things, which is where I can't think of what he's talking about. The single response, like you're decoupling these entities, and these entities can have also pieces inside that are also decoupled, cellular type structures. What Alan Kay's talking about. But I don't know if he references him ever. I don't think I recall that, because if he did, it'd be blowing open the whole thing instead of all this single. Just listen to what Alan Kay has to say. But he doesn't really promote it anymore because he's did a good push, and he cleaned up the bad stuff that happened, the confusions. If you go listen to his things, but it takes a while. He kind of gets a roundabout way. But Igor Borguyenko, he kind of breaks it down even for like coding, like modern day style. So I go into this in my course called how to program from the ground up, which is free. All I want is a star from GitHub. That's all I care about. It's free. I'll leave a link to below. Let's listen to the last part of this.
Regardless of how many people are actually implementing that role.
The hell does that mean? All right, so he's talking about this. I guess this style of what Alan Kay talks about, the cellular structures and having APIs only go through APIs, which isn't a performant, which is why people don't want to do it, because they want to have to do milliseconds timing. It makes a difference in this huge CRUD app when it comes to debugging it. I have no idea how it's working because everything's linked into everything else. Yeah, we're trying to avoid that. And I think people got that message, the decoupling thing, but the way he talks about it is like, this feels real sales call-y. Like, oh, what does that mean? Oh, well, you'll have to bring your people on and have them come to our training. It's like, okay, all right. Give me a like, subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon.